fond farewell to the penalty king. He scored 48 spot kicks, missed the 49th and never took another. Up he gans, David Lemon Wilkinson, header in the Bournemouth v Southend 1951-52 season. Sunderland's penalty king has died almost age 84. A good innings. Dave Wilkinson, born in 1928, earned the nickname Penalty King, playing professionally for Blackburn Rovers, Bournemouth and Berwick-upon-Tweed. The inside left came from an extended mining family between two world wars. His father moved to Ryhope from Pegswood, Northumberland, while his wife's side were also pit sinkers for Ryhope Coal Pit, while his brothers Billy and Alan were miners for Ryhope and Whitburn Pits. Dave slept in his first shoes that were football boots. He wouldn't take them off. He had successful stints with Saltsworth Juniors and Durham County Boys, attracting scouts, but National Service training intervened as World War II broke out when aged 9. In them days, expected to leave school at 14 and start a northeastern career in some kind of enslaved manual labour would have been a relatively peaceful process if it weren't for recession, depression, and the end of the world's largest shipbuilding industry, all in one long lifetime, without an organised backup. His future wife-to-be graduated in washing up the teachers' cups. Seriously, Dave had his first cigarette at age 5. If caught by the police up to mischief, you would get a clip round the ear-hole, and if you told your parents, they'd give you a clip round the ear-hole. There was no university, and the city of Sunderland was so poor it couldn't afford to be a city until 55 years after the Second War. Who can remember watching telly but had to wait until Dad had watched his news? Well, in them days, the wireless radio was home entertainment. Only the BBC was allowed to give FA Cup football reports, and listeners could follow along with the help of a Radio Times diagram, a procedure invented just 2 years before Dave was born. Historically, football has been reported as dangerous for a millennia. At least men no longer fall on their daggers and laugh off broken heads. But still in Dave's time, football was rough. It was legal to barge a goalie into the net, and also legally kick a ball out of a goalie's hands, even when turtled over it, breaking his ribs and kicking his head repeatedly. It was so normal that his own Sunderland Echo newspaper called it atrocious goalkeeping to lose his team 1 point, and that he had turned chicken. Jimmy Thorpe from Jarrow, aged 22, died after 9 days in hospital. But at least this incident made the FA change their rules that 1936 to protect the life of UK goalkeepers for the first time. Nonetheless, Dave would have heard while aged 7 that Sunderland finished second place in the top division, next to the all-time winners Arsenal with 54 points, conceding just 51 goals. Dave, aged 8, however, would have followed closely Sunderland's top division league clear win of the 1935-36 season with 56 points, and at that time finished with football's highest ever goal tally of 109 goals thanks to Bob Gurney's 31 goals and Rich Carter's 31 goals equally. Dave's brother Alan was already playing for Sunderland boys and later Gateshead. It was an important lesson for boys that one can be dead by the age of 22 or captain of the UK's best league team at age 23, scoring at least 1 goal in every single game. Better than being a part of what he had witnessed as a child, one of the many pit strikes fighting with police. He said he saw things he shouldn't have seen. Or his sister similar to this Wilkinson, organising one of the relentless Jarrow Crusades where some 200 out-of-work men, some blind veterans, represent tens of thousands in Jarrow alone, hunger marching 300 miles in 22 days, a country so disorganised, March for jobs still occurs a century later, but in comfortable trainers rather than cobblered shoes. The northeast saw 62% unemployment, the south were never higher than 14%. Football was the ultimate escape, and as if being league champions couldn't get any better, it did, by winning the FA Cup for the first time, 5 opponents in a knockout tournament, accumulating 15 goals to 3. In fact, the whole of Britain would have known was the first televised live competitive match and first football final in history. There was a bus strike, so 94,000 spectators walked to Wembley.
The royal couple arrive at the stadium and they bring a guest with them, King Farouk of Egypt. The Preston fans are happy after the first half, no wonder. They've seen O'Donnell put them 1 goal up. Burbank wins a corner on the right. Over it comes and Carter nods it to Gurney, who heads it past Burns. Burbank's lovely pass finds Gurney, who moves it along for his captain, and it's Carter who slams that ball into the net. How's that, Your Majesty? Burbank's having at Wembley. He spots a pass from Gallagher and chases through to make it 3-1. It's Captain Rach Carter who's given the trophy so many teams have cried for. Team to show their cheering followers the trophy. What a team. They won the league last year and now the cup.
Unfortunately, every time Sunderland keep winning, God creates a world war. Dave was fronted by the RAF to play footy, while his and future wife's World War I ancestors shuddered for what was to come or reminisce about. Whether infantry or Coldstream Guard and bodyguard for Winston Churchill, home guard, cross guns being a crack shot like this, or a whistleblowing sergeant gassed at the biggest British massacre called the Somme. Football, therefore, had only young amateurs, but at least managed by crippled but experienced managers. Dave went 15 as the war ended, playing for Distillery in Northern Ireland. He was likely part of the County Antrim Shield win by English-managed Alf Peachy. Records seem to show that there was no official manager for years after him, but Dave still had to complete his training with the RAF. At 17, Dave took his father's advice to accept the sign-up with freshly restarted but top-tier Blackburn Rovers in 1947, saying, "Move away, son, because a team that pays your accommodation, you're more likely to get playing." Dave's granddad would have lived when Blackburn were in their heyday. 3 consecutive FA Cup wins since 1884, plus a double since 89, with hat-trick king Jack Southworth. Champions again when Dave was born, so you can imagine how lucrative that offer must have felt. They were top tier for half a century before World War II, but couldn't hold it together. Their manager was ex-miner and winger Jack Bruton. He certainly had the credentials, having 3 caps for England when Dave was born. Manager Jack in his day was signed for Blackburn for their record £6,500, which today would be worth £1.25 million. Dave just missed playing with the 208-game veteran Walter Cook. Dave played with Wolves' top scorer of the league, who had 38 goals that season, and had 4 times England wartime caps to his name, Dennis Westcott. Dave also played with left-back Bill Telescopic Leg Eckersling, who was just 3 years older. Bill went on to gather 17 caps for England, 3 substitute B caps, as well as 406 appearances for Blackburn as fullback. For sure, his 14-year career of 20 goals taught Dave a trick or two, because 18 of the goals were spot kicks. However, Blackburn were going down. Their greengrocer filled a coffin with 11 vegetables to ceremoniously mourn their drop from top tier, an ongoing tradition. But at least Dave's dad was correct, as Dave would have seen Ronnie Clayton, who would go on to appear 56 times over 20 years of FA Cup matches. Anyway, Dave born as a Waysider, played for the Riversiders for 2 years. Then manager Jack took Dave with him to play for 3rd Division Cherries, Bournemouth and Boscombe Athletic for another 2 years. That means Dave's wife Olive, with a note in her hand and her interpretation, it directed her to find a Mr. Blackburn at the coach station. 2 years later she migrated to meet up with Dave in Bournemouth, but alone she bought a ticket at every station stop, because that's how she thought it worked. They must have liked Bournemouth, a spa resort fit for the monarchies, and an annual temperature average almost like Sunderland's peak summer average, while the sea temperature is 70% higher. The salary for sure would be comfortable, as anything geographically approaching London is 300% to 600% better than Durham's County or the Wirral. Meanwhile, French Valenciennes won the 1951 French Cup, and they offered Dave to sign up. So the best of 8,500 teams, led by fellow inside left George Gibson and defender Jim O'Dowd. George used to play for Sunderland until 1934 and Distillery until 36, the same season as Valenciennes saw one of the first international players. James Peter O'Dowd once played for Blackburn Rovers, then Valenciennes, and played for England just 3 years after manager Jack. However, Olive miscarried a hydatidiform mole, only a few known to medical science in them days. Dave stayed to look after Olive. In 1952, Dave joined Berwick upon Tweed ground as a semi-professional with their Rangers, who in their last season were freshly admitted to the shortly extant Scottish Football League C Division North East, but training with the Sunderland squad between matches, where he began a lifelong friendship with Sunderland's left half-star James Jimmy Mcnab, who had 323 matches and 18 goals until 1967. Dave's career was ended when he collided with an opposing goalkeeper and broke his leg in 3 places. Dad was known as the penalty king because he never missed, said son Gary. He scored 48 penalties consecutively, missed the 49th, and never took another. Retiring from the professional game with a fully chalked leg for a year, Newcastle v Berwick played a testimonial match for him. The proceeds were enough to buy his terraced house in Smith Street. He worked as a tea mixer while looking after Olive after her second miscarriage, but 3 children later, and always making a profit from his used car, Dave joined Thorn AEI, 1961 merge, training the factory football team. He became Pallion's general foreman, buying the first colour TVs in the street. He never lost his love of sport. He turned out for football teams across the region, including Ashington, Gateshead and Horden. Gateshead, Dave likely knew Charlie Ferguson, an inside forward who became a Sunderland scout. For sure, Bobby Dazzler Mitchell, an outside left, who played for Berwick for 51 matches, then Gateshead. Dave likely knew defender George F.M. Hardick, who managed Sunderland, then Gateshead. Horden, where he likely knew manager Tom Bale Baker, a goalie born in Seaham, and John Hodgson, a fullback who played for Sunderland once. Dave continued an obsession with golf that had begun at Berwick, while cricket was always an option for him too. Joining Houghton Golf Club in the 1950s, he became captain in 1964 and won the Shields, Green Shields and Dawson Cups. Before moving to Seaham, where he twice served as captain and was chairman of the Invitation-Only 24 Club and social secretary. Dad's whole life was dedicated to sport, whether it be scoiting benkers, dominoes or darts, participating or gambling, or just enjoying watching while having a drink with friends. Dave left Olive, Carol, Gary, David, 8 grandchildren and 14 great-grandchildren. The funeral service was held at Sunderland Crem at 1 p.m. on the 20th of the 1st, 2012.